The modern NBA is built on two things: player movement and content. The league wants us as fans to be constantly anticipating and talking about the next big move. But what about those moves that almost happened but didn't? Those secret behind the scenes trades whose details only come out years later, what happened to those trades? First up, let's start with a big one. The Golden State Warriors almost traded Steph Curry. Now, some of you might be thinking that this is referring to when the Warriors offered either Steph Curry or Monte Ellis to the Bucks for Andrew Bogut in 2012, but this one is actually even crazier because the entirety of the Warriors era with Steph almost never happened. Back on draft night in 2009, Curry was the most intriguing prospect in the entire class. Undeniably talented, but certainly came with a lot of question marks as well. One team that was all in on Steph, though, was the Phoenix Suns. And guess who was the GM of the Suns back in 2009? Steve Kerr, the eventual head coach of Steph and the Warriors. At the time in Phoenix, Kerr saw Curry as the second coming of Steve Nash, and they were desperate to get him. The problem was the Suns had the 14th pick in the draft, and Steph was pretty much a lock to go in the top 10, so the two teams worked out a deal. According to Steve Kerr, the Suns had a handshake agreement with the Warriors to trade them Amari Stoudemire for the 7th overall pick if Curry fell to that spot. And on draft night, when Curry dropped to the Warriors at 7, the Suns thought they had a deal. Now from here, you can kind of choose to believe who you want to on this. According to the Warriors, of course, there was never a deal in place, and they always wanted to take Curry, the eventual savior of their franchise. And according to the Suns, the Warriors backed out of the deal at the last minute for whatever reason. Some people have speculated that the Warriors dropped the deal because they saw how excited the fan base got over picking Curry, while others say that the Suns are just saying all this in hindsight to make themselves look even better. But one thing is for certain, there absolutely were conversations from the Warriors about trading away Steph Curry on draft night, and of course, this not happening had a huge impact. We all know about the success the Warriors have had, but according to the Suns, this also kind of messed up the rest of their draft as well. They were going to take Drew Holiday at 14, but when they thought they were getting Steph, they decided that they didn't need another guard and went with Earl Clark. And of course, Holiday went on to become a great player, and the Suns didn't even end up with Curry. Now, this one more so than the other entries on this list, you kind of have to just choose who to believe on this one because it's super easy for these teams to just kind of say things that make them look good in hindsight. But regardless, this is an insane what if for both the Suns and the Warriors. Next up now is maybe the most impactful what if trade of the entire video. Back in 2017, the Cleveland Cavaliers were coming off of a finals loss to the KD Warriors and were looking to upgrade their roster and try and keep LeBron on the team, who was a 2018 free agent. Primarily, they were trying to add another star alongside LeBron and Kyrie and send out Kevin Love. And keep in mind that all of this was before Kyrie's trade request in 2017, which I'm going to get to in a second. So the Cavs reportedly had a trade in place that would have added Paul George to the team alongside LeBron and Kyrie. George, of course, was also a 2018 free agent and had told the Pacers that he did not plan on re-signing with the team, making him one of the biggest trade targets on the market. And it also probably wouldn't take as much in exchange to get George as you would think, because he could possibly just leave in a year. And apparently the Cavs were very close on a deal. The structure was this: a 3-team trade in which the Nuggets would get Kevin Love, the Pacers would get Gary Harris and some picks, and the Cavs would get George. The deal was so far along, in fact, that George himself has admitted that it did almost happen. But apparently, as it got to the ownership approval stage, the trade fell apart at the last second, mostly because the Pacers did not want to send George to a division rival in Cleveland. So that trade never happens, and then a few weeks later, everything goes crazy in Cleveland because Kyrie Irving has now requested a trade, which makes the George trade situation that much more complicated. The Cavs tried to re-engage the Pacers on a deal that would involve either Irving himself or the assets that they got in exchange for sending Kyrie to a third team, but again, a deal wasn't able to get approved fully. So the Cavs ended up trading Kyrie to the Celtics, but then again, the Cavs tried to get George, now with the highly coveted Nets first-round pick in 2018 that they got in the Kyrie deal, but again, they couldn't come to an agreement. Soon after, George was sent to the Thunder for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, and the Cavs chose to hold on to the assets that they got in the Kyrie deal in case LeBron left in 2018, which of course he did. The Cavs then used that Nets pick on Colin Sexton at 8th overall, finally completing the loop of what could have been with all the assets in the various versions of potential Paul George trades. Had the move gone through, there's no real way of knowing how it would have gone for the Cavs with the always present variable that is Kyrie and just how loaded those Golden State teams were. It's honestly pretty likely that LeBron probably would have ended up leaving in 2018 anyway. And of course, for the Pacers, the deal that they ended up making with the Thunder worked out great great for them. Let's go back to the mid-2000s now for the next one, where a deal was in place that would have made Kobe Bryant a Detroit Piston. At the time, Kobe was really frustrated with the Lakers organization and was looking at other options. And this certainly wasn't the only time that he was nearly traded from the Lakers, but this is the most interesting one, I think. In the 2007 offseason, after 3 straight disappointing seasons, there began to be some doubt that the Lakers could surround Kobe with championship-level talent, and they even began to explore what a post-Kobe era would look like in LA. One of the teams that stepped up with a real offer was the Detroit Pistons, who, after beating the Lakers in the 2004 finals, had been to the finals one more time and 2 more conference finals in the years since, and viewed Kobe as the piece that could put them back on top. The offer reportedly was Bryant to Detroit for Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Amir Johnson, and a first-round pick in what would have been one of the biggest trades the league had ever seen to that point. Interestingly, it's been reported that both teams actually agreed to the deal, but Kobe vetoed the trade with his no-trade clause, and that is why it never happened. Hamilton and Prince once again had great seasons in Detroit the following year after the deal never went through, as they made it to the conference finals and lost to the eventual champion Boston Celtics. And without that super team coming together, the Pistons easily could have made the finals once again, even without the Kobe trade. Meanwhile, for the Lakers, they got things turned around immediately after almost trading away Kobe. They made the finals in 2008, where they also lost to the Celtics, before winning back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010, largely because of a different trade, bringing in Pau Gasol from the Grizzlies at the 2008 trade deadline. Without Kobe declining the trade and or the Lakers making the Gasol trade, who knows how this potential deal could have looked throughout the history of the NBA. Speaking of the 2008 Celtics, by the way, we do have to talk about the Kevin Garnett trade sweepstakes back in 2007. We know that KG ended up with the Celtics in that offseason along with Ray Allen, and that led to the Celtics winning the 2008 title. But a lot of other teams were in the running to get Garnett in that offseason, and many of them almost succeeded. The Warriors, Mavericks, and Lakers all were in pretty serious talks to get KG in 2007, amongst others, in addition to, of course, the Celtics, who ultimately landed him. But the team that arguably came the closest to getting him without actually making it happen was the Phoenix Suns. This was a bit of a different era as well when it came to trade requests, because Garnett didn't really want to leave the Timberwolves, but it just felt like he had to in order to have more team success, and the team was willing to listen to him in terms of where he wanted to go, and they were taking that into account. And one of the places that he certainly did want to go and play was Phoenix, to play with Steve Nash. The asking price for Minnesota is a little bit difficult to nail down exactly here, but it ranged from either Shawn Marion and Amari Stoudemire, or just Shawn Marion and some other assets. Regardless, the interest in KG to Phoenix was very real on both sides, but there are a few reasons that it never happened. First, KG would have had to take a pay cut within the salary cap to come to Phoenix if it was just Marion being traded away, and also Garnett wanted to play with Stoudemire and Nash, not just Nash, not to mention Marion's own contract demands that cooled Minnesota a bit on landing him in the trade. So any kind of framework that involved both Stoudemire and Marion going to Minnesota wouldn't have worked, because KG wanted to play with Amari, and then he would have had to take a pay cut if it was just Marion going to Minnesota, who Minnesota didn't even want to pay him as much as he wanted to in the first place. And so even though at first there were a lot of things that made sense about KG being traded to Phoenix, ultimately a good deal just never materialized for both sides. Meanwhile, this trade has a massive impact on the league over the next few seasons. The Celtics win the 2008 title, which, as I mentioned in the previous section, prevented the Pistons or Lakers from winning another title, and Marion staying with the Suns paved the way for him to get sent to the Heat in exchange for Shaq a few years later, and then later dumped as the Heat paved the way to create their salary cap space needed to sign LeBron and Chris Bosh in 2010. Ultimately, I do love how Garnett's career went in Boston and that he got a title out of it, but seeing it alongside Nash in Phoenix would have been pretty cool as well. And now we get to another massive trade for the Warriors that shows just how hard it is to build championship teams, because we've already shown that they almost traded away Steph Curry, but also they nearly traded away Klay Thompson. Back in 2014, the Warriors were looking to add more star power, and the most available star at the time was Kevin Love, who was looking to move on from the Minnesota Timberwolves and was an all-NBA caliber player. We know that eventually, once LeBron signed to return to the Cavs that offseason, Love was sent to Cleveland in a package centered around the #1 pick in the draft, Andrew Wiggins, but the Warriors were very far along on a deal that would have landed them Love instead. The proposed deal was David Lee, Klay Thompson, and either a first-round pick or Harrison Barnes in exchange for Love. The concept was that although Thompson and Barnes were good young pieces, Love represented the kind of star upgrade that the Warriors needed needed to push for championships. And a lot of people within the Warriors organization were willing to make the deal. However, one person that, according to himself, was passionately against the deal was Jerry West, who was a consultant in the front office at the time. West and head coach Steve Kerr both pushed back on the deal and recognized that Thompson was the perfect fit alongside Steph Curry in the backcourt, and despite a strong push from ownership and members of the front office to trade away Klay, the Warriors backed off the deal and Love was sent to the Cavs. Now remember, this was in the 2014 offseason. Then in the 2014-15 season, the Warriors won 67 games and the NBA title. The following year, they broke the single-game wins record, went 73-9, and lost in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals, ironically to Love and the Cavs, and then went on to win the 2017-18 and 2022 titles, all with Klay Thompson as a central piece. I'm not sure there is a bigger turnaround in the history of the league from a trade that almost happened for an unproven team, and then that team immediately becoming a borderline dynasty. The Warriors were the defining team in the league from 2014 on, and all of that almost didn't happen. Now, to be fair, they still had Steph, and Love would have been really good for them, but Draymond developed in that following season into the complementary piece that they needed in the front court, and the rest is history. The potential impact of this trade goes even further as well, as obviously the Cavs don't get Love if the Warriors trade for him first, and who knows who they go and get instead, or maybe they keep Wiggins, or any number of things could happen. But this turned out to be the perfect example of how crazy what ifs can get from trades that almost happened throughout NBA history.